On August 2020, Adam Pearce, WWE official at the time, was in a bit of a fix. It was just 2 days before the Payback Premium Live event of that year, where a newly crowned WWE Universal Champion, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, was set to defend the title against his former associate, Braun Strowman, and the returning Roman Reigns. Except this wasn't any Roman Reigns. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. We're going to get deep into this topic, but before we do, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button, or just give it a Superman punch. Don't actually punch your screen. While Adam Pearce got 2 of the 3 signatures on the contract for the big match, the entire episode revolved around him searching for Roman Reigns, an elusive figure. This was uncharacteristic of the Roman Reigns that fans had previously known before he took a sabbatical away from WWE during the pandemic. When he finally did, Roman Reigns told him to fix the changes he needed. Yes, this was definitely different, and he would be at Payback, but his signature was yet to be on the contract. He vowed that he would win back the WWE Universal title that he never lost in the first place, referencing the October 28th period when he had to vacate the title due to his battle with leukemia. Yeah, we're all paying attention to the history here, but what's the future? What's the present here in 2020 back then? Yeah, he ended up by saying, that's not a prediction, that's a spoiler, which is a Paul Heyman line. And then we immediately found out that that was because Paul Heyman was sitting right next to him as the camera pulled away, officially making Roman Reigns a Paul Heyman guy, and the special counsel to this new Roman Reigns character we would later know as the Tribal Chief. With this new partnership having officially lasted 3 years on WWE television, let's take a retrospective look at the special relationship between Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, and why exactly it goes well beyond just what you see on the screen. Paul Heyman, already an institution of his own within professional wrestling, revealed in an interview with ESPN's Mark Raimondi that he first met the Tribal Chief long before he was a chief, when he was just 3 years old. Back in 1988, Heyman was the assistant creative head of the Continental Wrestling Federation, where Roman Reigns' father, Sika, was wrestling at the time. Heyman even said he had more charisma at 3 years old than an entire locker room filled with future Hall of Famers. His association with the legendary Anoa'i family also had its roots for a brief run in 1989 when Samu, son of Afa Anoa'i, and Salofa Fatu, aka Rikishi, signed with WCW. They were billed as the Samoan SWAT team, and a 34-year-old man who sleazed his way into a managerial role was Paul E. Dangerously, with a brick of a smartphone to help him make all of the deals. Being such an important behind-the-scenes member of wrestling, it's not really surprising that Heyman directly worked with quite a few members of the Anoa'i family. But the story in 2020 was something completely different. Brock Lesnar was done with WWE after WrestleMania 36, having no desire to wrestle without crowds present during those Thunderdome days. And because of that, Paul Heyman had nothing to do on screen. As for Roman Reigns, he had pulled out of the WrestleMania 36 break amid the COVID-19 pandemic, choosing to be with his family until there was information about how to safely deal with this and film wrestling content. Also, this time away gave Reigns reflection on his career. He seemed to understand what most fans had been saying for years, that he was in dire need of a character change. And contrary to wrestling nerd belief that Roman Reigns gets booed because we don't like him and only women and children do, Reigns was actually getting cheered quite a lot at the time after coming off a battle against leukemia. And even then, it was clear that the days of the big dog had run their course, and he knew what he needed to do. And this is when he seemed to begin talks with Heyman, both of whom were responsible for creating this character we know now. In the aforementioned story by ESPN, it was also revealed that Heyman and Reigns were more than determined to make the story happen. Both Reigns and Heyman said they might not have returned to WWE unless they were given permission by WWE CEO Vince McMahon to execute this story in a mostly unscripted fashion. According to Heyman himself, the unforgettable night at Providence, Rhode Island, when Reigns announced his unfortunate battle once again with leukemia, truly laid the foundation for the head of the table character. The ESPN piece goes on to say, because of what he learned that night, he could be honest with his vulnerability and his fears and his sensitivities and his trials and tribulations and his sacrifice with the audience and not have to worry about being judged. So we now know what went on behind the scenes leading up to the heel turn. But how has the run itself panned out? In a few words, it's been a smashing success. This wasn't a rehash of what Paul Heyman had done on television with Brock Lesnar for years. No, this was different. Brock was a beast incarnate who had physical charisma, and Heyman would carry the act on the microphone. Roman Reigns wasn't someone who needed that type of role at his side. That hasn't been the case at all with Roman, and with Heyman being a key part of the Bloodline faction without needing to cut the same type of promos he did every week, gave his character in a supporting role different dynamics. And if you think about it, the only time where Paul Heyman was almost a central figure was during Roman Reigns' run between 2022 and 2023 with Brock Lesnar, where Heyman was kicked out, quote-unquote, of the Bloodline, only to betray the Beast Incarnate at the 2022 Royal Rumble, costing him the WWE Championship against Bobby Lashley. Oh, you little walrus weasel of a person, Paul Heyman. But other than that, his role as the special counsel to the tribal chief has been near perfect in execution. He isn't your conventional manager, and is more of a background character pulling the strings, making deals, and almost playing on that entire idea that Roman Reigns was entitled somehow to all of this power around him. But the real impact he has had might just be on all of the creative aspects of everything. This is Paul Heyman. This is the same Paul Heyman that ran SmackDown television as a head creative writer. He created ECW as we know it, one of the most influential promotions of all time. And yes, you better believe he has influence on the Bloodline storyline, and so does Roman Reigns. And you can see it. It plays off naturally with all of these actual, real, believable family relationships weaved together, and their family friend, Paul Heyman, playing a big influence on pulling all of those strings. For those unaware, Heyman has butted heads with Vince McMahon creatively throughout the years, having an on and off again relationship while still being a very influential figure backstage. And at one point, he was the creative head of the WWE brand Raw in 2020. Just 1 year after being announced for that role, he got removed from it. But it seems it's just purely speculation, because guess what? He's involved deeply in everything Bloodline. So you may take him out, but Heyman, as we've seen both in kayfabe and backstage, finds his way back in. While that may not be the case much longer with Vince McMahon taking a step back from the creative team, it certainly seems that Heyman is going to be involved in everything going on with Roman Reigns moving forward. On an appearance on the Sports Illustrated Media podcast, Heyman revealed that there is a whole team that works just on Reigns Bloodline type stories on TV. But the ideas always go through Roman Reigns and him, and often referring to themselves as a collective unit creatively. Wrestling legend Michael Hayes and Ryan Callahan are reported writers involved with SmackDown and are two people who have been key figures behind the story's evolution throughout the years. According to Heyman, the usual process involves them getting back to Reigns and Paul, who in turn bounce back different ideas themselves. So far, the formula has worked wonders. Historic ratings following WWE coming out of the pandemic, Roman Reigns is still the most talked about and most speculated champion in all of wrestling, with an unprecedented title reign in modern professional wrestling, not just for WWE. And while there might be some criticism saying it's stretched out, it's lasted too long, oh yeah, well that's really just an element of WWE television existing in a 24/7 media landscape with social media, with podcasts where you can constantly consume wrestling content. This isn't the wrestling of the past with only a handful of pay-per-views every year and maybe one TV show a week. Yeah, so the pages turn faster and the pages of the book are thicker. But guess what? Most of those pages have Roman Reigns on them. People are still reading the book that is WWE. Is this one of the greatest stories in WWE history? And a large part of it is the union between Roman Reigns and Heyman himself, something that stretches back to when the tribal chief was just a little child and one who had certainly the pedigree to become great in pro wrestling. This is something that goes well beyond television. What do you think of Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman pairing together? Should it continue well after the tribal chief storyline ends? Let us know in the comments below.